Good. Let's get rid of the dock. I don't need the dock.
I'm recording now.
Okay. All right. So, anybody have questions on stuff that they've had to deal with recently? We already answered half of them here before the meeting started. As I mentioned, I recently had to provision an HP Envoy 360 2-in-1, and I wasn't consulted before this was purchased. They just went ahead and got it. So I said, well, it's not a bad laptop. At least you got a Ryzen 5 out of the machine. So, I mean, that's saying it should have enough horsepower to run Zoom. And it had only 8 gigabytes of memory, which is a little bit on the light side. But what I didn't appreciate was the fact that it only had the 256 gig SSD.
Well,
And that I would have preferred to have larger, but it just means when it fails, it'll fail sooner rather than later.
well, on the topic of using a Ryzen, I have a Ryzen desktop with a Ryzen 3 2200G processor, which is very low end for gaming, really. And that runs Zoom fine within 8 gigs of memory, along with some other odds and ends.
Well, but it has 4 execution units, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the key. You have to have 4 execution units.
Yes.
Not all laptops that you can use have 4 execution units, and every time I've had that has less than 4, Danger Will Robinson. And even then, I've had a couple of them that are low-end 4s, and if you're running Zoom, you're fine. But if you do anything outside of Zoom, you have some pixelation happening.
Yes, I agree with that. Several of my higher-end old machines are i7s with only 2 real cores, but with hyper-threading, you get the equivalent of 4. That handles the load pretty well. But if it was like an i5 or an i3 on those, you don't have the hyper-threading, therefore you only have the 2 cores, and anything goes on that.
And those are usually laptops where they've cut down the number of cores just to make it more efficient.
Yeah, well, power efficient
right.
on the battery.
Yeah. Well, there's another one that I saw out there. I was trying to remember the article. I read it in. There was some, I think it was an Intel chip, and it only had the extensible cores, not the performance cores.
Really?
Okay. And it's real low power type of a thing. Okay. So it might be, I wasn't sure if they were offering this because it's one that the execution cores, the performance cores failed on and they were defective and they were just selling the chip that way, or they designed it this way to be a very low power, has multiple cores, okay, but nowhere near without the performance cores. It's not going to get anywhere close to the power needed by those machines do. So.
And on our older equipment, anybody who's got a Celeron or Pentium processor in their unit, whether it's laptop or desktop, those names are no longer valid. It's just Pentium Core, and that's it. There's no designation about how low in they are. You have to have an i3 or higher to have a designation.
A Pentium D, it's still supported.
I don't laugh. I've got 2 of them. I haven't touched them. I don't know when.
Yeah.
But I do know they do work. In fact, I've even run 10 on a Pentium D.
Yeah, I mean, so I had to provision this particular Envoy, putting in some of the Microsoft product and the copy of Office, and it was kind of interesting. Just installing Office, you'd think that would be pretty much straightforward on Windows 11. No, it had problems. It required a .NET update that wasn't there, so I had to manually pull it down and put it on before it was happy. But you can't make sure that everything it needs is here before you go ahead and do the install.
Well, here's
the other. I used this install before and didn't have problems on Win 10. This happened to be a Windows 11 machine.
Here's the other thing. For install Windows, Microsoft Office, it doesn't matter what version it is. If it isn't a modern one, they won't even let you register it, and therefore it will not run. So
Well, this one registered fine. It was in Office 2016.
yeah,
And
that's
I had
good
a
enough.
bulk light. I had what's it called? The nonprofit license to install it.
Right. But
So,
anything prior to 16 probably will not run. I know of 10 and 7 will not even install.
interesting. Well, I finally bought the bullet because I got tired of the nagware coming in that says from my OneDrive was telling me, you're at 5.3 gigabytes and you're only going to have 5 gigabytes, so this might impact your email soon because of your email attachments that you've saved forever. So I said, fine, I yield. I'm finally going to send Microsoft some money. So I decided to send them the family license pack, and I'll pay my $100 a year and get the terabyte of storage. And all of a sudden, the nagware went away, and the ads that were used to show up in the Outlook Online disappeared. And now maybe it will also listen to me when I try and report certain junk mail that looks like it's coming from Microsoft as junk, and maybe let them go and investigate, find out why I'm still seeing this stuff.
Yeah, the
Let
spam
them go
mail,
after it.
the spam mail is getting outrageous.
Yeah.
I had, before I did this, and I don't know why, it was like the day before, there was one person that sent me something that showed up in my spam folder, and it was an obscene response to somebody's email that they'd received. Okay, I mean, because he just, was tired of the email, so he responded obscenely. And I'm looking at this, and I'm not anywhere on the 2, so it had to be a blind carbon to me, but I couldn't figure out why I was copied on this with multiple people responding. There's like about 30 messages come sailing through that didn't have my email address identified anywhere in the entire information. So I thought, something's wrong with Outlook. So either that or that they're trying to really get me to move. And that was the last straw. So I finally said, fine, let's see if this works. And I was concerned that I might stop receiving email at some point in time if I exceeded my OneDrive quota by much more than I had. So I thought, I could go ahead and remove all that mail, but it's too hard to find another place to park it, and it's more convenient to be able to access it online if I am able to. So kept it online, bought the bullet. Now I'll see if they'll let me have that terabyte or not. It's going to make it a lot easier to install Office on another machine, however.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I'm not sure is, what do they consider to be my family?
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be from the same general IP address for the...
My family doesn't share my IP. My family is all over the place. What about my ant colony?
They'll probably go by the IP address, and that's it.
I think because I should be able to use this in more than one IP domain, I would think.
Only if it's on a mobile device, not on a desktop.
I would think even a desktop, I should be able to do that, because if it's family, it's family. And how many times are families separated or blended or whatever, and you still have to support it? So I'll have to look that designation up at some point in time when I have more time. What does Microsoft consider to be a family? I think you just have to invite them from your main account, and after that, they said, well, we trust you, that's family.
That could be on some cases, but companies like Netflix are cracking down on sharing, and they want you to do the formal sharing and pay a couple of dollars more a month.
Which is what my son-in-law does. He automatically got the more expensive Netflix, and we basically share that, and I let him have access to some of our stuff too. So
yeah.
But I know HBO will not work that way anymore.
Yeah.
HBO Max wants to come from your main IP address.
Yeah.
So I'll have to set up a VPN so they can still use my IP address.
There's a lot of shit like that that's changing in the last several months, and I don't think it's going to stop either.
So did you get your Comcast speed upgraded as well?
I was checked out as okay with a proviso. I have complained twice now in the last 2 months about problems with the router. Well, he hooked up his laptop that I insisted he bring in and check things out. But if you reset the modem router, the DHCP works for a period of time, and then it quits. But the other problem was I can't.
This is a Comcast supplied router?
It's not Comcast. It was WOW, and it's now part of RCN Astound.
Okay.
And bottom line is, I used to always be able to get into my routers and change settings and check for updates, stuff like that. Well, I haven't done that in several years. Now all of a sudden, access denied. When the technician was here, and I asked him to log into the router to see if he could get in, he got the same access denied.
Yeah. If they control, but this is so you can change your own SSIDs, the wireless portion?
Yes, and stuff like that. I can't change a thing. I can't get in. The technician couldn't get in.
And there's no web interface for you to change that yourself?
Nope. And the bad part is the fact that the DHCP has been failing over time. And recently I had 5G radio drop out from 1 to 2 minutes and then come back all by itself.
Huh. Well, I've noticed where 5G will bounce and then come back because I have I'm going to take that back. I think it may only be 4G. I have a separate alarm system which sometimes will report that the long-range radio has failed for some reason and it comes back, and I'll go down and look at the blinky light on the additional unit that was added, and it says everything is fine, and it has a backup connection to go through my LAN anyway. So, I'm sorry, it's through the wireless LAN.
Hang on, are you both talking about 5G or 5 gigahertz band?
5 gigahertz band.
Oh, no. See, now I was talking 4G. So the 5 gig band, that's a different thing. Yes.
I'm talking about 5 gigahertz band on a regular router, cable router.
Right.
Yeah.
The kind you get from Comcast or Astound or any of these others.
Yeah. Mine's RCN because they took over WOW in this region.
See, now in my case, I am using my own cable modem, my own router, and they're separate, distinct entities. So I have an Aris 8200 that is capable of doing a full gig if it needed and more. If they can deliver it, it could run faster. You can't get anything out of it faster than the 2 1 gigabit ports that are on the side of it that you'd have to use some sort of esoteric high-end router that could handle multiple links. So right now I run at the gigabit speeds for all my wired stuff. The wireless router is a Linksys WRT 1900 ACS. So, and it's fast enough, but I had noticed long before this, and even on the previous Linksys router, that DHCP was frequently a source of contention, and it depended a lot upon where the DHCP server was. When my cable modem would communicate to the router, when the router was asking for a DHCP address, if the DHCP server was not co-located on the same network that the cable modem was connected to, but had to do like a DHCP forwarding agent internally to the Comcast system. Sometimes the timing of the DHCP response would time out, and it would fail to negotiate a DHCP address.
Well, see, on mine, especially the second tech that came out, they were two different ones. I told them flat out for months, in order to get internet on any of my devices, that includes my TV, except for the Roku streaming device, because you can't do it there. I have to have all static addresses. I cannot have any dynamic addressing.
Well, as long as the router can get a dynamic address to wherever he's supposed to be on the Comcast network and provide routing between those 2 points, then that's usually fine.
Well, to have to do what
So that's what a router does.
Well, I understand, but see, I have all static addresses on my devices that used to be all DHCP IPs. And so the end result is how many people with internet service are going to change all their devices to a static address in order to keep functioning?
Well, see, in my case, I have, like I said, I have the DHCP address assigned by the wireless router, and I do have some devices that have fixed addresses in the DHCP map. So once they get their address, they can get the same address back.
Yeah.
Some of them have been also configured as static, like printers and stuff,
Yes.
so they don't move around too much.
Right.
I've had issues sometimes where it will do the IPv4 DHCP handshake work and then try to do the IPv6 DHCP and fail. So I'll have IPv4 addresses, but no IPv6 address, and the 6 to 4 doesn't always play to all the sites that you need to play with. So I had to come up with a scenario where I could reliably get both DHCP handshakes to work. And that particular scenario required cable modem to be powered up first and the wireless router powered up second. And while they're still connected to each other, if you disconnected the connection, you had to power up the wireless router and then shut it down and then go through the startup sequence again. Because the cable modem would take a set on the MAC address of the wireless router and remember that it's the same one. If something else plugs in place of it, it starts breaking things, and now you get new IP addresses assigned from Comcast based on the MAC address that talked to the wireless modem, the cable modem. So if you want to try and keep the same address or close to the same address over a period of time, you had to make sure that connection stayed together. And to resolve this, every time I had a power failure and one thing came up before the other, I ended up putting them on a UPS. And now I just periodically reset the system every several months because it's been up so long.
Well, for me, to try and keep things working well, I actually have a 7-day timer to turn off the electricity at night when I'm asleep. And they noticed it and asked me about it. And I says, that's why I'm doing it. And they don't get it. I don't know what it's going to take to probably get a replacement modem router out of the suckers.
Yeah, that's not to say that the wireless routers are not without a problem. One of my very early Linksys, WRT, what was it, a 53? It was the little tiny one. It could not handle the DHCP handshake through a DHCP relay agent when the packet was in excess of the size of the actual DHCP packet. So if they sent a packet that was 512 bytes and it only needed 250 bytes, it would cause an error in the wireless router to fail the DHCP handshake.
Overload.
So that's a pure programming bug. But I didn't have the source code at the time, and I didn't have the incentive to try and rebuild it once I finally did get it, because it was old, low, and slow. Time to get something newer and faster. So, yeah. And I actually have a backup WRT 1900 ACS just in case the first one failed, because at the time the price was I could get almost two for the price of one. So I thought, why not? But I've been able to swap those back and forth as needed. And on occasion, sometimes when I had to do problem diagnosis on my previous cable modem, that sometimes would help. But with the current cable modem, and I know it runs warm, and I'm not sure how long it would actually run when the power fails, because it'll draw more power out of that thing, and I might only have 5 hours of runtime before it crashes. But for the most part, it holds its own. And I found that keeping the power stable between the wireless router and the cable modem so that it doesn't interrupt it is a lot more reliable in terms of making sure connections work. If I don't get an internet connection, I don't have to go look at that. I just have to look at the blinking lights on the cable modem to know some tree fell over and took out a cable somewhere. And then I just go on to then I fire up my phone and turn off Wi-Fi and go to the Comcast site and check for outages. Yes, there's an outage here.
Well,
How many people? You got 6 other people with you that are out. Then I know it's at the end of my street.
When the second tech came out, they came out in part because there were problems, but not a designated outage that was causing my problems to call for service to begin with. And it turned out that they are subsequently calling it an outage. And it seems like they're blaming Comcast because sometimes their people were doing things in such a fashion that would cause other services to start failing.
Well, if the Comcast cable is not RF tight when they make those connections and it starts leaking, it will interfere with other services, like HBO being rated out of some of the Comcast cables can interfere with low-flying aircraft.
Yeah.
It goes on to the aircraft band where, here's an FM modulated signal going into an AM modulated band. It makes a lot of noise.
Well,
my brother once happened to, for his cable scenario at home, happened to use a amplifier, and then he had a second amplifier. So he had one amplifier plugged into another amplifier to get enough signal to his upstairs TV. Except for one point, he was not using quad shielded coax cable at the time, and it started interfering. So there was reports of interference over his house. And the FCC informed Comcast that they should go around and find out who's radiating their signal.
Oh.
And he had a couple of Comcast trucks knock on his door and said, do you have an amplifier? Yes, remove it. Yes, you're interfering with inbound flights to O'Hare. And he happens to be in Roselle, so that was a common thing for them to be vectored over his house. Such fun. Anybody else had problems like that in the past?
Not with over amplifying.
Yeah,
But
I've seen the interference issue typically when there's been like lots of rain and such, where if rain can penetrate any of these connectors and cause it to be intermittent, where you'll see pixelation on some channels. And depending on where the pixelation has occurred, sometimes I can tell with my old Motorola cable boxes. I can throw them into diagnostic mode because I still recall the sequence needed to do that. And I can watch the short and long-term error stats on a particular channel. And I'll say, well, if this is not changing here, then the problem is up past the head end, between the head end and its source.
Yeah, with Comcast cable modems, and this may be true of other carriers, their equipment, their DOCSIS 3.0 equipment anyway, is beginning to age. And all of the customers will eventually experience intermittent to constant failures, and very weird little failures sometimes. The trouble is, once you get the new cable modem, it's going to be one of these X-Fi little boxes, and they don't support a DVR.
Yeah.
You have to go over to streaming.
That's why I gave him back my X1 box. I said, you sent me this X1 box on a lark. I never even plugged it in. And I just took it back to them last month and I said, hey, I haven't needed this in over a year. You know, take it off my bill and I'm going to stay with this. And if you're not going to support me, then you may lose me as well. But I found out how little they can actually do at the Xfinity store. They can't do any adjustment of bills. That's all done online and remotely. They can't do any credits other than you returned equipment. They can give you new equipment, but they've dumbed down the people in the stores to the point where they're basically useless.
Yeah, well, also too, they get abused a lot too by irate people coming in with problems and returning equipment.
Yeah, but you brought some equipment back, so you did return equipment.
Oh yeah, I did return equipment. Yes. So they had to give me the credit for the returned equipment.
As for anything on your bill, that
Yeah.
goes to the online app.
I did go and call them up, and I was going to try and figure out, well, what services can I drop and bring? Well, if you do that, you have to do a new plan, and then you go into the new terms. And I just said, well, forget that. Just give me the credit. What kind of deal can you give me? So I got another $40 off a month for a year. You know, so it's like, yeah, okay, we'll take that. At least brings it back from where it was last year.
One time I downgraded my service. Then I later upgraded just the DVR capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So that turned out to be a better deal.
I mean, I still have old Philips external DVRs that take in like the separate audio and video, or they might take an S-video connection. I think I got hooked up with an S-video connection into them. So it's like an SD plus, somewhere between SD and HD, which is good enough to watch the program in many cases. Because when I have a choice of downloading content, I'll look at the, do I need the 1080 or can I buy with the 720? 720 will actually watch the show. It may be not as clear as the 1080. The only difference is when they have a picture of somebody's cell phone and you're supposed to read that message. That aggravates the crap out of me. Why don't you just zoom in on it so everyone can see it, not the people who have 4K?
Does that work for current cable signals, or are they still encrypted the way they used to be?
I'm pulling them out the end of the cable box, and my cable boxes, the old ones, still allow me to change the channel at a particular time and date and basically stay on that channel for so long a period until the program ends or some number of minutes after it. And then go ahead and, do the recording that way.
Okay, so the signal itself is not encrypted in a way.
It's not encrypted. And very importantly, the signal coming out of my cable box does not have the protection bit turned on. Because I have had, when I had one of the Cisco cable boxes, which was just supposed to be like a TV adapter or maybe a higher end TV adapter, that was just weird. What they ended up doing was unprotecting the HBO and protecting all the other channels. So they had just flipped the protection bit option. So I'm just trying to record channel 7 and it says the program is protected. I mean, somewhere in my boxes of stuff in my room, I have one of these strippers that you can put in line between the two and it'll strip out the protection bit on analog because it's not a digital signal. So I can strip it if I need to, but I just said, this is ridiculous. Took it back and got a Motorola one. Or I found another Motorola one just like mine. I had to travel down to the Elmhurst store to pick it up at the time. And I've since upgraded to the newer Motorola's, but they're still a little long in the tooth. They could have had, these ones would have supported a local recording if they had the disk drives installed and they were provisioned as such. So my plan says I have a DVR, but I'm not using any extra one box, so I basically not making myself avail of the DVR. I'll just go find that program on a website somewheres and download it through my secure FTP and be done with it. So let's see, who else is looking for it? Something else. Never mind. Let us make this go quiet here. Good. All right.
Seems like a problem night tonight.
Yeah, it's a problem no matter how you do it.
No, I mean all the issues we've talked about, whether it's on the recording or not, the stuff prior to the beginning of the meeting and what we've discussed so far. Sheesh.
Yeah, there's lots of issues. I mean, I've tried doing some of the streaming from the streaming option in Comcast, because you're allowed to have at least one streaming device, and if you want more than one, I'm not sure how that works yet. But for the most part, a lot of the things that I get, I have Roku. So, and the Roku with the options that are available in that, with Roku and Comcast, when you add the Peacock channel, it cuts down the number of commercials. So you'll have maybe 3 interruptions of commercials instead of 5 or 6, with five video ads that keep repeating. That's the most aggravating. When I get one of the channels that shows me the same ad over and over again, at least Peacock, for the most part, cycles through their commercials enough that I'm not seeing the same thing over and over again. Wouldn't mind if they were Super Bowl commercials, but no, these are not Super Bowl commercials.
How about the mayor's election ads?
Yeah, there's a ton of those. I just hit the mute button and let it skip through it, and then there's a way that sometimes you can fool some of these services. Like if you happen to hit pause, or basically if you get out of the application and then come back into it like you're restarting it, sometimes it'll start you just past the commercial break.
Huh.
Okay, sometimes it works. That also sometimes works for, believe it or not, with Comcast, if you're using on demand and you're watching something that has commercial content, because their choice is to show you a number that is not reflective of the real running time of the program. So they may show you 43 minutes for an hour-long program, which is the normal non-commercial content. But then if you ever watch the bar where you're at, I'm at 52 minutes in a 43-minute program. I've wrapped around past 0, okay? And depending on if you ever stop and go back in, it's confused because it doesn't know where to start you. Sometimes it starts you farther ahead than you are, and you have to back up to get to where you left off.
Jeez.
Just it's a bug in their video on demand. I don't know. I would try and explain this to them if I had found the right person, but there ain't too many of those people working there.
Right.
I do mostly broadcast television, so I get a good signal, and so I do off the air onto a TiVo.
Yeah, that would work too. I mean, I've considered, maybe pulling that and getting, HD, or if I wanted to record 4K for some reason when it's all available, I may consider it.
TiVo has upgrades in the works, and they have one that already does the 4K, and they're going to do a further upgrade if ATSC 3 comes through.
Yeah, well, that's if. We're still waiting for some of these things to all of a sudden jump up and bite us,
Yeah, well, ATSC 2 never happened.
Yeah, that's true. Never did. And my TVs are 1080. That's it. I don't have any 4K TVs. I mean, the first time I saw something that was higher than 1080, I said, wait a moment. I can see this person's horrors on his face.
Yep.
Is this what you want to see?
Well, on some of the computers, primarily all laptops or Chromebooks, I got quite a number of them that are 1440p, which I'm used to because of a Chromebook that I use for the more FYIs. But I rediscovered that one of my laptops has 2K like Apple has. And
Okay.
boy, you start getting into that, you can imagine 4K being twice as small as what 2K shows. And both the 2K and some of the 1440s, I actually have the zoom set to like 125 or 150. But on
Yeah.
the 2K, I got to have it at 175.
Yeah, I got to use a 125 on this machine because it's a 1920.
Yeah.
So otherwise, and my wife can't read any of the fine print anyway, so I may have to either put an external monitor on it at some point in time. Put a 27-inch monitor on the table behind here. I think, well, then she'll complain. Go find a different room for this. No, you can't fit it in your office? Well, then clean out your office. I've heard that story.
Yeah.
We probably all have heard that argument before. Yeah. So, yeah, part of the thing with the smart home that I'm going to talk about later also may involve some of the processing of video. Not all video sources, however, will be compliant with some of the other smart home technologies. They'll have their own way of running the video through, and they haven't decided whether or not to make it compliant to Matter. But that's still not even in the current Matter spec. It's supposed to be in the next version. Yes, Bert.
Well, one of my favorite things is being able to have my television running on my iPhone. So basically, if I'm in the house from Comcast, it wouldn't matter if I got a regular TV or I have this, I can run anything.
Okay, well, that's one way of doing it. What do you have that supports that?
There's an app from Comcast.
Oh, using the Comcast streaming app. Okay,
Right.
so you're streaming, yes.
Yeah, Comcast has one. TiVo has an app.
Yeah.
And I have the TiVo streaming device for my TV. So
I'm sorry, but this is still too small.
Yeah, well, and I'm used to 1440p a lot besides the lower resolutions and the 2K. I ain't going to go down to an iPhone with 2K display and try and watch something that's microscopic.
I will have to change these if I want to watch something on that side.
Yes.
Especially when they hold up their phone and I'm supposed to read the text message that somebody received.
Well, I'm into trifocals now, so I got to switch between no glasses, distant glasses, or reading close-up glasses.
These are reading cheaters.
Yeah,
okay. I'm still getting by with them, but I'm going to have to crank it up. The 1 1/4 is no longer enough. I'm going to have to do something like 1 1/2 or 175.
Yeah, well, see, right now I'm on.
Yeah, you're watching Ghosts. I can tell that. But if he held up his phone and you're supposed to read his text message, I would defy you to read it.
Yeah, and
unless you can freeze it and magnify it, like, oh, that's what it said.
See, I'm wearing contacts right now for long distance. The ones I've got on here are the 125s for medium distance, and these are 175s for real reading.
Yeah, well, watching TV on phones was invented by and made for much younger people.
I would assume so.
And they can read people's phones over the phone.
Well,
you have to be under about 25 years old to be able to do it.
Yeah.
This is something that Bert's got.
Bert's got a magnifier up there.
Yeah. That's called a frontal lens. Yes, I know what it is. It came off of an old projector, right?
No, this was an app I bought over the holidays. I found this gadget. And basically you take the phone, put it in one end, and you can watch a 9-inch screen, whatever's on the phone, if you want.
And that's where'd you get it? American Science Center?
I don't remember who. It was an oddball
Yeah, that would be something they would carry.
I took a chance. It was called Magna XTD.
Magna XTD.
Magni XTD. And it was about $40, which was ridiculous price. But nonetheless, once in a
And you
while,
could have taken apart an old slide projector and gotten that lens out of there.
well, you can do a lot of things. But so there are ways to be able to get a bigger screen right off your phone too.
Low tech, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're clever enough, there's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah. So this new laptop that I was playing with, I thought, this is not bad. I mean, it's thin and everything like that. But then I noticed the one thing that was missing on this that I really would have liked to have. There was no hardwired Ethernet port on it. So it has two USB-Cs, has a couple of USB 3.1 or 2, wherever they are at, to the external ones. And I said, well, if I want to add a Ethernet port on this thing so I can plug it into, there was a need for me to log into a router on a separate gigabit port that I needed to do, and I was unable to do it with that laptop. I had to use a desktop and then reprogram half of it to make it happy. But was able to do what I needed to do. I needed to check some of the configuration on the switch. But this would have been real nice to be able to do it with this laptop. Just get an Ethernet cable, plug it in, do it. But now if I'm going to do that with this machine, I'm going to have to invest in one of these USB-C extender hub with gigabit Ethernet and HDMI and other things all come rolled into one, so that I can either power the laptop and connect all this stuff, or other things with it.
Well, you can use something like that.
Well, that's one of the things I was looking at, except the one I was looking at also had other USB ports,
Yes,
HDMI port,
right.
and the gigabit port. And I think it could also supply power. So there was another USB-C.
This is strictly Ethernet. I have about 3 or 4 of these things, and I've been using them, and I had to use it on 2 of these machines simply because the Wi-Fi was having big issues. So I just stuck this in, and Ethernet works, period. But it's the Wi-Fi that doesn't have the DHCP, and sometimes the 5 gig drops out. But otherwise, this works great. Gave me
I was trying to, I had a similar problem. I had to run a new cable for halfway across our facility, and I was ready to punch down the, instead of trying to put it into a connector, a male connector that plugs in, I decided to bite the bullet and just put female connectors with the conventional push downs on the back, so it'd be relatively simple. Well, I had one connector left over from a 2-pack that I had, and I had a bag of 5 that I had just purchased as well. And I had just punched down the one, and then I opened up the bag of 5, and I look on the back of it, and it's got the color codes on different pins.
Woo!
It's
Really?
like, no, stupid thing. So I had to take the one connector off, get 2 out of this bag, so they have the same thing. Because you know what your livelihood's going to be like if you try and use different color codes in different places. It's never going to work.
That's right.
And as it was, I just tried to pull the wires off and push them down onto the replacement one, and a couple wires were open. So I just said, hell with it, pulled all the wires off, cut another inch off of both ends, re-stripped the cable, punched them all down on the same connectors again. Everything was fine.
Yeah.
But I just had to go through that exercise of futility that, yeah. And it's always, is that white and green, or is that, yeah, that's white and green. No, that's over there. The green's here and the white and green's over there.
Yeah, all you gotta do is mess up the wires one way or the other.
I don't care. Even if they just put numbers next to these things, then like this goes into this section of this plug, that would be fine for me, because I can go look up EIA 568A or B and make my choice.
Right. And that's usually what I do in making the connections then, because at least that way I have standardization in the connections.
Mm-hmm. So how many people out there actually have smart devices at home?
A little bit.
Nothing for Bert. No Alexa?
No, not at all.
So if I do say, Alexa, Alexa, how many people's machines just woke up?
Well, it depends if he asks Cortana or not, but
Cortana, yes. If I ask Cortana, she'll wake up too.
No,
Yeah.
that's always permanently disabled.
There's so many times where all of a sudden my Google Home will just start talking because they hear something. The scariest one was when my son-in-law and my daughter were here for a short period while their bathroom was being renovated. Chris would come home late and he'd sit in front of the TV and fall asleep with the TV on. Well, one program on the TV had the OK and the G word, and all of a sudden it started it said play some music or something, and I didn't have Spotify or anything like that hooked up to it, so it didn't find anything, so it just said, I'll play this channel instead. And he woke up and all of a sudden there's music playing. He wondered, what the heck happened? And I was able to go back into the Google Assistant and see what triggered it. And was able to say, I could hear the TV saying something at the time.
when the original Alexas came out, one of my grandchildren was about 4. And he would run up to it and punch the button and have it play a song to him. And that was the greatest thing in the world at the time.
Well, my grandchildren have also learned how to tell the G person in the room how to play whatever thing they wanted to. There was particular things that they were able to find and listen to. And they would run up and start saying strange things to it. And every once in a while, we would say something strange to it and just see what its response was. Like, like you would complain to the assistant, "You don't know anything." "Oh, I'm working on that." Just seeing the programmed responses that whoever's coded this has put in there. And yeah, go ahead and tell your digital assistant it doesn't know anything, and then listen to what it responds to.
There's a lot of things like that if you say the right things, you wonder who programmed this thing.
Well, I'm sure they had fun doing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start this right now. Everybody can see this now, I hope?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. So this is a little bit of a pun. Smart home choice, does it matter? And the matter in this case is the new standard that is an ongoing event. So first, the original definition of a smart home was a residence that uses internet-connected devices to enable remote monitoring and management of appliances and systems such as lighting and heating. It actually goes back way before the internet as well. But I've seen a term for this called domotics, a combination of domestic and robotics, which is robotic technology for use in the home. And you need to pick a hub of some sort that can usually facilitate this, because many of the smart devices then don't need a hub inside of each one of them in order to connect to the internet, and that cuts down on the cost a little bit. And when did it actually start? I found some references to this one thing back in '66 called Echo 4, which was able to, no, I didn't do that. It did it all by itself.
Yeah,
There.
yeah.
I leaned on something and there's a touchpad here, so I got to be real careful. So Echo 4 could actually control a home temperature, store temp messages and recipes, which I thought was quite a novel thing back then with 1966
Yeah.
technology. I think it was done with relays too. Create a grocery list and turn on and off appliances, but it was never sold as an actual product, but it did exist.
Huh.
In the 70s, X10 controllers
Yeah, I
were
remember
the
that.
big thing back then, with especially with some of the 8008 and 8080 processors that existed. One of my brothers was really big into X10 controllers and such, and he had used a lot of it to automate much of his house, like sprinkler systems and things like that. He had connections for.
I still
you-
have that. I
I
still
know
have the
they,
X10.
they still have X10s. X10 still
Oh,
lives
yeah.
out there, and you can even have chips now that mimic X10 better than the original X10 chips did because they're being done in a microprocessor and emulating.
Well, I've got the module now that plugs in and it works over the internet. I can actually program with my phone the X10. Where
And-
before I had to use it on the computer, the module.
But the X10 still required a wired connection for the most part. There was some wireless, but primarily the wireless was not to the endpoint devices. It was wired devices that were plugged in over power line.
But I had it with I was using my Radio Shack color computer on it many years
Yeah.
ago.
Oh yeah, those were classic for that. My brother had one of those too. 6809 and Amiga.
Yep.
He was into both of those. The first actual smart thermostat has been considered to be the Ecobee back in 2007. Nest didn't arrive until 2011. Actual remote controls, however, were actually demonstrated by Nikola Tesla in 1898. So, remote controls, I think he got you on there. Newer remote controls, the ones that Zenith came up with, the old Space Command, the one that did the ultrasonic tones.
Right.
First it was actual tones, and then it was ultrasonic tones, then infrared and wireless came as well. So let's go down to the next one. So, but when does remote control become smart? Okay, that becomes the distinction was when you were able to pre-program settings into devices or hubs to automate the living environment. And being able to control this activity from outside the home remotely is also the defining condition. There are many common platforms that do allow smart control that lets you use voice control activation to be either a local device or a phone. But with all of these competing technologies, and there's a number of them out there. There's, HomeKit Siri, there's Google, there's Ring, Nest, Home, Alexa, Home Connect devices. There's all these things out there, but really it depends on which voice assistant you probably prefer or use most often, because you're going to gravitate to one of the big three to go with this. Okay, but there are other ones out there. Like I said, there's the HomeKit, Google Home, Amazon, Samsung SmartThings is another one that's out there. That's just mostly software, but not too much in the hardware category. Technically, if this then that, which can automated tasks, can be considered a precursor of smart home or even partially a smart home. There's one out there called Control4. Logitech has one. Yonami has one. Smart Life, even Roku Smart Home. All of those exist out there and are competing for our dollars.
Yep.
So, do you need to choose one over the other? And it really depends on the devices you want to use. There is a new common specification that's been termed Matter and used to be known as Project Chip, which allows interoperability with Matter compliant devices. But you'll have to realize where it came from and what its limitations might be. The CSA alliance behind Chip was originally termed the Zigbee Alliance. Zigbee is a overlay technology to 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi that allows you to control many more devices, but at a slower speed. So the only Zigbee appliances I happen to have here happens to be the interface I have to my smart meter for the electric grid. That's a Zigbee appliance, and it communicates on that on Zigbee channel, I think it's 11 or 12, and that appears to be approximately Wi-Fi channel 6 on 2.4 gigahertz. However, if your device doesn't support Matter, then you're pretty much limited to whatever the big three platforms which your device support. And in many cases, the devices that you're looking at may support all the HomeKits, the Google, or the Alexa already out of the box. So, you can choose to use Matter going forward. However, it doesn't say that all of your devices have to be Matter compliant to be able to be used. I mean, I have Matter compliant code inside my Google Home, as somebody may have in their Alexa, as somebody else might have in their Siri. So I'm not going to put it into my presentation here, but when I send this presentation, you can go ahead and look at all of these links that I have here. There's a pretty comprehensive report in Consumer Reports that describes how Matter is going to possibly work with all of the extensions out there. It's still not quite there yet, maybe on the next release, but it's getting there. It has a GitHub repository and a website for the published standard. If you want to go wading through the published standard, there's about 100 megabytes worth of document out there. And that's not including the simplified Chinese documents that also exist there, because they have them in both. Some of these documents, however, are Zigbee documents, and they go back 12 years. Other home systems. 2022 was one article that I looked through that went through and also started to show you the migration of some other plans that are out there. There's another open source solution called SmartThings. SmartThings is sort of like a Google Home, but it's open source. So if you don't like being kowtowed to Google or Alexa, Amazon having control of everything you say, this might be something you want to look into. Another source I found, Best Home Solutions of 2023 from this, theambient.com. There was a lot of information on that site as well, and there's several other similar links that you can get to from the first part if you link into this. But what about newer players in the smart home arena? Okay, while we have some of these newer offerings might not yet support Matter, most of these companies are either part of the Matter Standards Organization or plan to support Matter, but they may not do it now. Roku is a member of this alliance, but they don't quite support Matter yet. But Roku is like a very large video presence, so they already have the video portion on your TV. Okay, so you don't need another device to look at or talk to. You could basically look at some of this stuff on your TV, especially if you're trying to control or watch multiple cameras, which might be able to be done on a Google Nest or any of the Alexa devices to help you watch your cameras as well. But Roku's already got the video portion down, so it might be easier for them. They have a doorbell? They have a doorbell. Does it do recording? It does recording. So you look and say, well, maybe I'll consider this. And some of these newer players are considerably cheaper than the guys that have been there for a while. And all of the three big players, hubs, already support Matter. So the hub that you have will probably support Matter compliant new devices, which might mix very well with your old devices, as long as the same hub is controlling both of them. I use Wemo devices, okay? They're not the current smart switch capable outlet control, but there's other ones out there that Amazon is selling cheaper. But it was supposed to, when it came out, to support HomeKit, and it supported Alexa, and it supported Google. So it supported the big three, but it's not going to be Matter compliant, and they're not going to update the old stuff to be Matter compliant. Another new thing that's out there, which can be used by Matter, is called Thread, okay? And Thread is a technology that basically turns a number of semi-smart devices into a poor man's web mesh. So you can, it will allow devices to communicate through each other to get back to the network access point. That's the purpose of a mesh, is to be able to improve your coverage for some of these devices. So start to look, when you see things, keep an eye open for Thread as well. And if you want to read more about Thread, I gave a couple more links here as well. Now, if I went into any one of these links, it would probably take about 4 meetings to go through. But I will send this to everybody so that they have the capability of doing this. Let's go ahead and stop the share so I can do this a little easier. All right. And there's the chat. Thank you. All right. To everyone. Make sure I do everyone this time. All right. I want to send. That's what I want. My computer. All right. That's the one I want. That's the one I need. Here it comes. So everybody who wants a copy of it, here it comes. Go ahead and pull it down in chat. And if anybody can't receive it in the chat, let me know and I will email them.
It isn't in chat.
It's not there yet, but sometimes there's a slight delay.
Yes. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
popped
There it
up.
is.
Yeah, and there's a limit. I only have 12 megabit upload at this location.
Oh.
Hmm.
That will do.
Yeah. Yeah, Comcast keeps on raising my download speed. They said, oh, now you can do 400 megabit. So on my wired appliances, I get 475 megabit, but it's still only 12 going up.
Well, what would you consider this?
Back it up a little bit.
Oh,
It
it's
won't
BN
focus
Link.
on-
I got this through Amazon. It's called BN Link.
Okay. Now I can see.
I got
Yeah.
I got the thing blurred. Yeah. Anyway, these work on Wi-Fi with my phone, and it's on a 2.4 gigahertz.
Which
So I use that
basically-
for the lights.
Yeah,
I've replaced
basically it sounds almost like my Wemo devices, but just a
Yeah.
different version. And it has all of the same issues that I have with my Wemo. Is that on 2.4, it has, 2.4 has better coverage to some places, but you still have some of the restrictions that exist because they have to use, like they're all talking on the same channel. Okay, so I have multiple 2.4s in my house right now, so I can have coverage in different places. But one limitation I found on the Wemo devices is if you plug 2 of them on the same outlet strip, they will interfere with each other to the point where one of them will be able to receive and work properly, and the other one will not.
I don't have that, but what I did is I replaced some of my X10 modules with this because I was having trouble. Wasn't working throughout the house on my X10.
Yeah, I have approximately 8 or 10 Wemo devices that I use most of the time at Christmas. I'll just plug in a bunch of them at Christmas time, have them set with pre-programmed times to turn on and turn off. Once they've been downloaded with the information to turn on and off, they can actually work without being connected to the internet. Other than making sure what time it is. If there's power interruption, then they may forget what time it is. But for the most part, I found they're very reliable in terms of turning on lights and turning off lights. Instead of using wired timers anymore, I use my Wemo devices with a pre-program. But that, like I said, the only difference between them and the one you have is yours uses a different control. They all use the same mechanism. The app runs on your phone and does not run on your computer. Okay.
Nope.
However, I did research and I found a programming library that allows me to interrogate and switch on and off through a web interface to the device.
Okay.
So there's a way you could send the right string to your device and it will turn on, turn off, or tell you what it is. And that's what Wemo looks like when most of the devices are unplugged. But like I found, yeah, go ahead, Bert. Unmute. Unmute first. There.
In the past, working from an iPhone, iPad, you couldn't download out of Zoom. But the latest update lets me do that now.
Oh, okay.
The attachment.
I've not tried that before. I could probably try it with my phone and see whether or not it downloads to my phone, but yeah,
Well, I
it
just
isn't
went
immediate.
to chat and clicked on the PDF that you put in there, and it opened up the PDF, and the three dots at the top gave me the chance to send it to another app, and I sent it to my mail, and
Oh,
it came up on my computer.
wow, that works. Cool.
But it didn't do that before up until now. So the latest update of Zoom apparently supports that now.
Right. So I was looking, like I said, the wireless plugs. I think there's a Roku now wireless plug as well, but I'm not sure if that one also supports 5 gigahertz as well. Because I found that I try not to rely too much on 2.4 for doing anything. For the most part, I want most of my devices to stay up on 5 gigahertz and have enough bandwidth to do what they need to do. Occasionally, I'll find one that's on 2.4, and that's probably because I was outside. And then I wondered why my email's taking so long to load on my phone, and you connected to the 2.4 instead of the 5. Go back to the 5 gigahertz SSID. I try and prioritize it so that it'll go to the 5 gig first, but unfortunately it doesn't always work that way. Once it's on a particular SSID, it doesn't want to change. I had originally come up with some patentable logic that I once put into a patent disclosure, which is now currently owned by Google, but it was not deemed worthy enough to be a patent by the patent office. But it was when to look at different SSIDs for coverage when I'm in a particular scenario. If I'm on a particular cell tower and you've been to the cell tower before, and you know the cell tower is down the block from your house, then when you notice this, not using location specific, but using the cell tower identification, we can turn on the Wi-Fi here because we're close to home. And then when we roll into the driveway, we'll connect to Wi-Fi. And the whole purpose of this in the past when I did this disclosure was being able to have a voice over Wi-Fi or a voice over LTE call automatically transfer across to the right portal once you walked into like a building or something and you were at work. Your business phone would automatically transition to be voice over Wi-Fi and transfer the call as well. So you would continue. So you go down to a basement where you don't have cellular coverage, you're still able to be on your telephone call.
Well, my iPhone works like that.
Well, it does now, but we developed the technology over 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Before the iPhone.
Yeah, before the iPhone. We were doing this back in 2002, 2003, yes. It was on much more limited candy bar type of phones back then, but yeah. Did a lot of those. We even did push to talk over Wi-Fi as well. Remember like the Nextel units? Yeah. And of course, when you did the push to talk, it wasn't just a beep that you got in your handset. The beep meant it already talked to the other end. That was the difference on the Nextel product as opposed to everybody else that advertised push to talk. The permit tone that you got back was an indication to the operator he had actually chirped the other end, wherever it was at in the Nextel system or in our Wi-Fi system. So you knew that their phone was powered on and it was within range of the Wi-Fi or cellular, wherever it was at. Any other questions on this? Was that clear enough to understand that where to go to look for more stuff on Matter? It's like I said, there's a lot of stuff there. But the one link that I gave you also talked about a lot of the HomeKit products, a lot of the Google products, a lot of the Alexa products that are specific to those particular manufacturers and supported systems. Yes, Bert.
Well, Microsoft always talks about the edge, IoT edge in a sense. And when they originally started talking about it, it was for business applications where they would say things like you would have a tag on every tool and you would be able to find it through this kind of an IoT environment to be able to, in a construction site or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that ever happened.
It already did. It wasn't Microsoft that did it, though. There was other companies that did it. You can do it now with a low-power Bluetooth tag or the Apple tags. The Apple tags would do the same function if they could be mounted on your tool. They've added Bluetooth low energy to battery packs on some of the manufacturers, so you can interrogate them and say, well, what state is the battery pack in before you run out to the truck and get it. Also, if somebody walks away with it, you can track it. But no, they have, I think they've even built into some tools the capability of communicating to the battery to see whether or not the battery belongs with this tool or not. And if it doesn't, it won't work. So if somebody steals the tool, they can't make use of it.
Well, it seems like there ought to be even more applications. Of course, finding somebody's keys is, you can locate your car, but, there ought to be more applications. They are complaining a little bit about the Apple tags.
Yeah. And as long as you have enough power to run an Apple tag, that the question is how long can it run and what is it communicating with in order to facilitate its location information? Because it's got to be able to determine location. It's got to be able to communicate to a network infrastructure of some sort, whether it's a cellular connection or some other mechanism. And usually they're working over cellular. They're using GPS. To use GPS, I have to have a 1.3 gigahertz receiver to be able to hear a GPS signal. Now, granted, these are made very, very small and they're in phones right now, but putting them into the tag also has the issue of how long will the battery last.
And then there's crowdsourcing. There's a crowdsourcing part of it too, where, people are driving down and they pick up a find your phone kind of signal.
Yeah, they exist too. You said something, Wayne, too?
Yeah, we bought 4 of those when we went on a cruise last September. Put one in each of our suitcases, and we got home, and I was able to find 3 of them, but the other one I couldn't find, but it was in the suitcase, and I kept running my phone all around the suitcase, and it apparently it had fallen down in some sort of a crease in one of the compartments in the suitcase, because it was in the suitcase. I knew it was there, but I couldn't see it. But I finally found it after digging and checking.
So the suitcase responded, but you couldn't find the tag.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And when we were in the airport or whatever, you could see where it's at.
The question I would have to see, now that's low power Bluetooth for the most part, but I know that some of these type of tags can also communicate over longer distance than Bluetooth is going to do.
Yeah.
And that's key. How far can they go? Where can they be picked up by? I certainly wouldn't expect it to run in a airplane hold, keeping on chirping, and I'm here.
Now I've got a Fitbit, and last year ago, I'd lost it, and I couldn't figure out. I thought it was in the bedroom, and there's a little app that you can run to try to check it out, and it would say, well, it's close here, close. It was outside, I when I'd been outside fiddling with Christmas decorations, it had fallen. And it was sitting outside the house, but it was picking it up in the bedroom, and it kept showing that it was in the bedroom.
Close, but on the wrong side of the wall.
Right. It was amazing that it picked it up clear up through the side of the house and the windows and everything.
That's why the fire department, when their requirements for 911 are a little bit different for location than other people's idea of what location is. They want to get GPS location or the caller's location to within 6 inches. Why do they need it within 6 inches? So they know which side of the wall they're on.
Okay.
Just like the case that you found out, it was on the wrong side of the wall.
It was amazing, it's unbelievable. This thing was like 15, 20 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
And it kept showing up in the bedroom.
Yeah, that's what would probably drive me crazy too. Right now, the only thing I can use if I misplace my watch is, at 7:15 in the morning, see if I can hear it go beep, 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 and then try and use my ears to try and figure out where it's coming from. And with high-pitched frequencies, your ears are not worth it trying to determine location. The human head is not designed to locate high-pitched noises. It can detect them, it can't locate them. That used to be another fun thing that they would do at some of the parks, like Great America or whatever they want to call themselves now, Six Flags. But when they would play music outside in the parking lot, they would deliberately feed each other speaker out of phase. And because they were feeding the music out of phase, you couldn't tell where the music was coming from. It was just like all around. You could be looking right at the speaker, but you're hearing the music from someplace else because it's tricking your brain into thinking it's over at the other speaker.
It's like in my apartment when I hear these high-pitched alarm beeps. Is it my apartment? Is it the utility corridor? Or is it my neighbor's apartment? Upstairs, downstairs? Which upstairs neighbor?
Is it a fire alarm from downstairs? Am I picking it up through the drainage pipe?
Well, I am downstairs. I'm
Okay,
the
you
lowest
are-
level.
Well,
So
is there a tunnel underneath you?
no, there isn't nothing with an alarm. There's a utility corridor behind me.
Okay.
That utility corridor is not continuous with my neighbor's apartment, which also has a utility corridor. So which alarm is it?
Yes. I want a distinctive alarm. I want mine to be different than others.
Yeah, it should give a certain number or pattern of beeps.
Yeah, like beep its serial number or something. What is that? 3 and 3, 3 short, 3 long, 4 short. Yes. Okay, that's
Yeah,
mine.
they should be clusters of beeps. And if they
We're
are in a
about
certain
6.
pattern, what?
Yeah. We're about 6 blocks away from WCFL radio towers.
Mm.
And my wife was in her bathroom one time, and all of a sudden she heard this stuff going on. And it was the fan assembly and light assembly was picking up this and actually transmitting the information.
So it was actually
Crazy.
receiving. It was acting like a
Right.
crystal receiver. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It was when he was saying, "I've got a dream." And I went in there and I could hear it. It was ridiculous.
I used to have, when I used to live in Elmhurst, which was not too much farther north than the CFL towers, I had a long wire antenna that ran a couple hundred feet in the backyard. And I could pull, with a crystal detector, I could pull over 50 volts of energy, and basically a 50 volt supply. I could almost, and I pick up WCFL and drive a loudspeaker with it.
Yeah.
Not loud, but I could, there wasn't a lot of current. that same long wire also worked really good as a attractor of static energy. I had the 5 kilovolt lightning arresters would flash when there was close strikes.
Yep. You
Yeah.
really have to ground those.
Oh, I was grounded well until it actually got a really close strike and vaporized most of the copper.
Yeah, then you have to replace it.
Yeah,
least-
yeah.
At least your house doesn't burn down.
No, the house never burned down. I was kind of lucky in that respect.
Yeah. When lightning strikes one of those things, the wire is supposed to take up the energy and break so that you don't get problems.
Yeah, I think there was little droplets of copper where the wire used to be.
You'd be lucky if you had that much. Just a
Oh.
green flash.
Green flash, yes. Did you like the news reports of an asteroid that supposedly blew up over England?
Was that over England?
Yeah, there was something that basically lit up the skies and
Yeah.
didn't make it to the ground. So it was a meteor. It was a green meteor, okay? But people were reporting it as an asteroid.
Well, at least they weren't mistaking Starlink for something like a UFO.
Oh, they had that problem too when they're looking at different lights in the sky and trying to figure out, is that a balloon or is that something else?
Yeah, they had a Starlink over Wisconsin that people were wondering what it was.
I guess that one balloon hobbyist association thinks that the one over Alaska may have been one of theirs.
Well, you know what?
Whoa.
There's a reason why you have to use so much firepower to get a balloon down at that altitude.
Uh-huh.
The air pressure is so low that you could shoot the thing full of holes and it would not deflate.
It takes that long to let the helium leak out, and
Yeah, helium won't leak out at that altitude.
Ah.
And since it's helium, you can't easily heat it up. Although if you had a powerful enough laser, you could.
Well, you'd have to use a laser that's sliced open half of the side of it or something. But you'd have to have a material that's not translucent either.
I'm thinking you could actually excite the helium enough that it would expand and burst the balloon.
Now we're going to have a new, strategic weapon where we have the balloon popper.
Yeah.
Concentrated RF radio waves that are run at the frequency of helium so that we can heat up the balloon and pop.
Yeah, but those 4 balloons, they had to use a total of 5 rockets for over $2 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what.
But you have to test them every once in a while anyway. And the one of them missed, so they had to fire another
Right.
one.
Right.
I want to know how they made sure that the missile went into the water. They said it went into the water, safely into the water.
So Bob,
Yeah.
the people who claim that it might be one of theirs, does it never come down? Is it up there like forever or what?
No, I'm not sure what they were. They actually have several of these. I'm trying to remember what they call themselves. Something like bottle cap or something. I think I read, if you do a web search, look for balloon bottle cap. I think that's what it is.
Well, there was one case of a weather balloon that got away, and they tried to shoot it with bullets. It eventually went across the Atlantic, and it finally crashed in Finland. So this was from Canada to Finland.
Bottle Cap Balloon Brigade Hobbyist Group.
Yep.
Might have launched the object that was shot down. Let's do this. Turn it off there. Yes. Refresh. Good.
But they're able to get transmissions from it then?
I'm not sure what they had hooked up to it. Okay.
You could have something transmitting clear through the time that it hits the earth or the water.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been transmitting, but it may not be responding on whatever frequency the aircraft is that is, trying to interrogate it. He might be transmitting on a military 300 megahertz frequency that nobody else uses, or it may have been aircraft band, AM. Who knows what they would have been doing?
Yeah,
I
there's
mean-
no way. There's no way we would have known what the Chinese origin balloons were doing.
Yeah, I mean, China picks their own frequencies as well. So, I mean, they don't even use the same time signals that we use. They got their own time signal at 68 kilohertz instead of our 60 and 61 kilohertz.
And they have their own GPS.
Their own GPS too. Although, what I did hear about what they had, where did I hear that? They had a intelligence officer as one of the guests on Bill Maher, and he was describing what he had heard about some of the stuff, and he suspected that if the Chinese are putting stuff like balloons to capture surveillance material, that means they're not trusting their satellites to capture adequate surveillance information.
Well, satellites may not be granular enough.
Well, it's
Well, they're
just
going
that
to-
our satellites, if there's no clouds in the sky, can basically tell you what book you're reading from outer space, okay? And maybe the Chinese ones aren't as accurate that are up there or have the same technology. There was a suspicion that they were using much older technology in their balloon that they had floated through to capture some information. Like the claim was 70s and 80s technology, which is real old
Yeah.
stuff.
The whole idea is they don't have the coverage of us that we have of them.
Yeah, which is a good thing for now.
But we've been sending balloons over China, it turns out.
We may have, yes. Bert,
Was
you
there
got a balloon you're going to send up? Yeah.
A trial
wasn't
balloon.
there a Wi-Fi service with balloons over Africa?
They did try it. for
They
a while.
tried it.
Really? Yeah.
The problem is the balloon moves.
Yeah,
The
it's not geosynchronous.
Yeah, it's not geosynchronous, yes. That's why Starlink is working better, because it's a little bit higher up and it doesn't have to deal with the wind. It has to deal with the orbit and has to be able to transmit and basically hand off from one satellite to another. But that's the same issue that Iridium had. The only difference between Starlink and Iridium was Starlink has much higher bandwidth because the technology they're using. Iridium, the highest speed you could get was 2,400 baud. That was it. Was good for audio calls, but for digital, 2,400 baud was tops. And I'm not sure if the constellation is still intact with Iridium. I think it's still running. I think they kept on putting some more satellites up to keep it going.
They tried to repurpose it.
They did purpose it, and the people who bought it as a fire sale turned around and sold all of the assets, basically sold it as a service back to the U.S. government, so they can use it for their operatives.
Yeah. Well, we don't know exactly how it's being used once the government gets it.
Yeah. But, I mean, Starlink is basically a higher constellation satellite, higher density. It's got to be able to hand off traffic from satellite to satellite, because the satellite is only in view for a certain period of time, and then it's on a different course, it's going over a different section of the Earth. So it's got to hand it over to a satellite that's going to be here. And the ground station has some of the decision-making process on how many satellites it can hear and who it's going to talk to.
And
Even
they-
GPS. GPS does not work with one satellite.
Right.
You have to have
Right.
a minimum of 3 and preferred 6
Yeah.
satellite coverage before GPS can lock your location. And depending on how many satellites depends on how granular an area I know where you're at.
Is that Starlink an Elon Musk thing?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
'Cause I heard
And-
something within about a week ago or so. I heard something that Elon Musk was complaining that Ukrainians were using his thing to like target Russians or something. I didn't really
No,
understand.
he
Yeah.
was complaining about the fact that Starlink is primarily the only internet that was available to Ukraine after the Russians took out most of the infrastructure. And he had offered the use of Starlink for free. Okay. And then he says, well, it'd be nice if you would pay me something for the use, because I got to orbit some more satellites to give you the coverage you need.
Yeah, but
Yes, they use it to target Russians too, but
The
they would
more-
use any signal that they had to target Russians, even the Russian cell phones when they call home.
Yeah, part of the complaint is that the U.S. has provided the targeting data.
Yes. Here, when he goes on his GSM phone and calls home, we'll tell you where it's going to, and you can just target this thing. If it's in Ukraine and it's calling Russia, shoot it.
Yeah, but now they're using it to target areas of Russia that are near Ukraine.
Oh, that's even better. Yeah. As long as they get the longer range artillery and rockets, the long range HIMARS, is that what they wanted?
That's one of the things.
Yeah.
They have other ways of getting in. The problem is that Musk cannot afford to be seen as facilitating that
Yes.
because he does business in Russia.
Yeah. That is a high class problem. Yes.
It's the same reason that Israel won't get involved.
Yeah.
They're doing business with Russia.
I made a comment on Facebook when this was going on. We were talking about the balloons. I said, how long will it be before when this balloon starts going over Kentucky and Tennessee, there'll be a bunch of the good old boys being out there ready to take a shot at it.
Yeah, and like I said, 60 miles up, I don't think so. They'll never see it.
It was only 13 miles up, but not too many rifles I've ever heard of can shoot 13 miles straight up.
No, they can't. They can't.
And if they could, it's I mean, the only thing you can get that'll even go that high might be some artillery shells that if you can shoot 26 miles that way at a 45-degree angle, then you can go 13 miles up.
Yeah.
And then they'll be just stopping there at 13 miles.
Yeah, an artillery shell might actually be able to take it out.
Well, that's what, the old anti-aircraft batteries, 88 millimeter. Yeah. It was not just an anti-tank weapon, it was also an anti-aircraft weapon.
Yeah, but you get a lot of shells returning.
You got a lot of stuff coming down, that's true.
Yeah.
What goes up must come down.
Well,
And
that's
even a
why
bullet
they wore
coming-
helmets.
Well, that's not going to be much good against an artillery shell landing on you.
Yeah.
But anyway, bullets can also come down, and most civilians aren't wearing helmets.
Yeah. I'm surprised we haven't dug out some of the older gear and then let them use that as well, although they might repurpose it and do exactly what they want to do with it. Like the old Nike Herc that was out there we used to use for anti-aircraft.
Right.
Was advertised of being able to go to 75,000 feet. Really could go to 150,000. And it could steer itself and cruise around up there until it found the squadron of bombers it wanted to take out. And then it would fly over them and then detonate something that was nuclear. Except that they figured out that wouldn't work so well when you're doing this over your population.
Right.
Because about 2 miles east of me used to be a Nike site.
Yeah, I've had a couple in my area too, and that one in Munster near Dyer, and then I had one up by Wolf Lake here.
The Boston area used to be loaded with different sites that were in populated areas.
My house would be in the range of the drop zone for the primary booster. So depending on which way they were firing, I'd have a luck of whether or not when it tumbled back, would it hit me or not? Because they don't come straight down, they sort of tumble back.
Yeah.
Very interesting points. Now that would be a new application, a smart home which also controls my anti-aircraft missiles.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
My strategic balloon de-initiative.
Well, what you need is an alarm that warns you when stuff is coming down, with all the space junk coming down and everything.
Well, it's surprising though how much they don't see in the air right now, because people used to, well, why can't UFOs show up? And well, they're not really looking all the time, I mean, for the most part, the radar is trying to track all of the airplanes that are out there, and all of those nice airplanes happen to have transponders on them, so they flash back on the radar. They don't have to try and determine, okay, is that a plane or is that a flock of birds? It wants to ignore the cloud formations and the birds and just concentrate on something that might be an aircraft.
Yeah. That's why it's so dangerous if an aircraft does turn off its transponder.
Yeah, it'll look like a big flock of birds.
Or it might not be detected at all.
I think it would still be detected. Depends on what resolution they're trying to resolve. If it's a NORAD type of thing or if it's an aircraft radar, depends on what they're trying to pick up.
Yeah, well, it may have been NORAD that first detected the balloons.
I think they did. I'm pretty sure that they were the ones that detected it.
Mhm.
Especially if those balloons.
Yeah, I heard that they were watching. They actually saw him launch it in China, and they started tracking it from the time it was launched.
Right.
But
Okay.
the thing is that reporter in Montana was the one that mentioned that he saw this in the sky. That's why they finally had to come out with it,
Yeah.
or else we may not have heard about it.
Well, we didn't hear about the 3 of them that took a play that went across during the time of Donald, or 4, or whatever it was.
Right.
That's all the ones that they admit to.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was kind of interesting. I think the ones that the Chinese used, they probably didn't use the metallized mylar because that would show up too much on radar.
Yeah.
So they must have had a supply of helium that kept filling the balloon up because it would leak out relatively rapidly. Even though that's low pressure, it's still going to leak out. So they must add a supply of helium to keep this thing floating halfway around the Earth, as opposed to the metallized mylar, which is a lot better at keeping it in. That's probably what the balloon enthusiasts used, and that's why they showed up on the other radars. And okay, what's this coming through at 40,000 feet? Shoot it down. Boom.
Well, anyway, I wouldn't be able to automate my apartment with anything you talk to because we don't have much of anything by way of sound insulation here. And if I had to talk to my appliance, to my hub at some hour when it's supposed to be quiet, I'd rather be able to do something other than talk.
And change the name that it responds to so that it's something less common, like Jarvis.
Yeah. So that when other people upstairs and all over the place are talking to theirs.
I would have loved to be able to change my Google Home Assistant to respond to Jarvis and have a Paul Bettany voice.
Yeah. You used to be able to change Siri's voice.
Yeah, but I don't happen to have too many Apple products here, if you guessed.
And Cortana can have the voice changed.
I haven't played so much, but I tried to keep Cortana off a lot of my devices. I know what's going to happen if Google listens to it because I'll see an ad for it somewhere on my phone. But I don't know what's going to happen in my computer if all of a sudden my emails now also start reflecting everything I was talking about nearby.
Well, and Microsoft is really pushing a lot of advertising now too.
Well, it's not. They won't have to push much because ChatGPT will be figuring out what to push to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
The way ChatGPT currently is put together, it doesn't have any actual knowledge about anything. It just simply scrapes whatever it finds and spews it out according to a language algorithm. They're much more interested in analyzing how it builds language capabilities than in how it builds factual knowledge.
Yeah, I had one of the things I subscribed to is the Ask the Builder column. It's his Tim Carter, and he's normally in the Thursday Tribune by us. And as an experiment, he generated 2 stories and wanted these readers to evaluate them and didn't say anything more about the 2 stories. Which one of these stories do you think is more authoritative? And in the one case, it was the story he wrote.
Yeah.
And in the other case, it was a machine-created narrative. and he had asked the thing to basically explain, to generate a story about how to handle rusted metal and include an anecdote between the conversation between him and his daughter. Well, it created an anecdotal, story, and it had nothing to do with reality, but it was the story that this thing had created out of nothing, basically.
Yeah.
And he was surprised by how many people were could not determine which is which.
One of the problems with ChatGPT is it sounds authoritative and it looks like it has actually provided sources. And with math problems, it looks like it has provided an actual proof, when in fact the proof is sheer nonsense and the numbers don't add up. It can't even calculate the number of days between two dates. It can't do anything with calculations.
So it sounds like Fox News.
I'm not going to get into that debate between Fox and CNN.
I'm sorry. I just could. There was a perfect time for it.
It could just as easily be CNN or one.
It could be CNN. Actually, who owns CNN? Yeah.
The one thing it won't be is NPR.
It won't be NPR. Is correct. Yeah.
By the way, Ed, the tips and tricks SIG had a session with ChatGPT this week, and it told us that the Chicago Computer Society is defunct, no longer in existence.
Okay.
We don't exist as of 2012. September.
And I have yet to find out where it got the information on which it based that statement. Because you can even do a Google search, and you can find APCUG listings from 2013 and onward.
Yeah.
It's not hard to do, but they almost all refer back to our old website, which has been taken over by an ad bot.
Okay. All right. And that's probably why he says, "Oh, their website doesn't exist." Of course not. Yes.
Well, that only happened in 2022 or 2023, sometime
2022.
whenever the switch was flipped.
2022.
2022. So they should. It should probably have said 2021 at the latest as the time of disbanding. Where it got that term disband, I don't know. There must have been something on the web that said one of our SIGs or one of our regions disbanded.
Well, you may be referring to Alan Lee's XSIG that it was referencing, which stopped running back then. And so that may be what it picked up to say it was over.
Ziegler's old website, his old homepage, is still up, and it has references to at least one of the SIGs, and it may be that SIG.
Well,
No,
it may have been going through old copies of hard copy. Who knows?
Well, hard copy, e-hard copy was still being posted through what year now?
A couple of years ago.
It's stopped in 2021, I think.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. Yeah.
So that was after 2012 also.
Yeah.
The problem with ChatGPT is that if it's a topic on which very little has been posted on the web, and there's been very little national discussion, it's not going to have picked up anything. Its knowledge only goes through 2021, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's not up to date. It
September
may
2020.
get bits and pieces more recent, but it's not universal.
September 2021 was the last time they trained it.
And some of the chat GPT may be blocked as a bot in some sites that have information.
I know why it's complaining. Go do a Chicago Computer Society Google search,
Yeah.
and whatever Google thinks our website is, it's got a temporarily closed on it.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, but that
Because we
was not
changed
as
it.
that was not as
Yeah.
of 2021, 2012 rather.
Okay.
That was 2022.
All right. But it could have but if it also shows the CCS2 links on the same search.
Yes.
So I'm wondering what Google is using to determine we're temporarily closed.
That's
Well,
what
we
we're
went ahead
wondering.
and asked it to look further, and it did an update.
Okay.
When we asked. The other thing is today I listened to Chat GPT PT on somebody on Excel,
Okay.
and they went through a dozen variations of different things that they asked, some of which were accurate, some of which weren't. So I think this thing has to be mature over a period of time.
Well,
That's really
you're
what-
using the consumer version of it, not the mil-spec version.
By the way, when Google Maps says temporarily closed, it refers to the COVID restrictions that were in place.
Okay. All right.
So it does not mean anything about the organization.
Okay.
And I think probably ChatGPT has been trained to know that. And
Well,
besides, it doesn't use Google Maps. It uses text sources only.
Only text sources.
Yeah.
Okay. That means
Text.
I'm going to have to send everything in graphical bitmap form from now on.
Yeah, it does not pick up images. It does
Okay.
not do anything.
I'll hide all of my text in slanted text that is
Yeah.
randomly slanted in various places.
Yeah, the other thing is picking up on bots not being allowed to have accounts. It will not be able to pick up on Twitter. It will not be able to pick up on Facebook as much. But it can pick out Facebook pages that are indexed in search because it did
Ooh.
pick up ours.
Okay. All right. So it'll listen to. Now, does it listen to Instagram too? Probably not, because that's mostly pictorial.
That's pictorial.
Yeah.
I don't think it got our more recent Facebook postings, but from the Facebook postings, it should have been able to pick up that there were announcements about CCS meetings and events after 2012.
Yeah. It should have done that.
Unless Facebook is blocking a bot.
Okay. Facebook doesn't block a lot. If you got the money, they let you have everything.
This is the public facing part of Facebook.
Okay.
You don't have to have an account to see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what Joe Nomak has been posting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's publicly available.
Yeah.
You don't need an account.
Correct.
Yeah. Here's what I thought, when we were talking about some of the octagonal object that was seen. This is what I thought that they were actually seeing, because it had strings hanging from it. It was awfully octagonal.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I could not resist that one. When I saw that picture, I said, this is perfect.
Are you saying they shut him down?
They could have. He was full of hot air, though.
If you had a certain different crowd here, they'd have Joe Biden up there.
Yeah, I know they would. Yeah. That's why I have to post occasional things on my Facebook page, just because I do have friends that are on the other side of the viewpoint. And I just, they start posting up stuff on let's go Brandon and that kind of stuff. And I said, okay, fine. You're going to do the Let's Go Brandon. I'm going to post this thing up.
Or if they wanted somebody more octagonal, I suppose that would be Kamala Harris.
They could do that too. Yes. But yeah, I just
Anyway,
couldn't resist
unidentifiable objects.
Yeah. Yeah, Facebook tagging, yes.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that, if it's only text, does that mean it doesn't have location information either, or is it still able to?
It does not. If the location is listed in text form at some point, somewhere, it'll
And
pick up on it. But it may also be able to pick up on some of these web crawlers that I put out information pages like ZoomInfo.
Yeah.
And places like that. ZoomInfo did pick up on some misleading little snippets about CCS, which would indicate that we're no longer around.
Interesting.
What is Zoom Info? What's the,
Zoom Info is an aggregator of information, and it is also bot driven. And it uses a web crawler, which just goes all over the web and finds bits and pieces of information.
Finds everything we want to know about Dennis and captures it and sells it to the highest bidder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you subscribe to... Huh? What was that, Tim?
About 1 cent.
Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, but remember, they're buying 250 million individuals worth of information. So 1 cent times 250 million, that's a sizable number. It's worth it.
Yeah.
So
given the investment that they make.
yeah, I mean, if you're going to scream through every possible web page you can find, you know, and try and find something of intelligence out there, any real smart AI program would say there's no intelligent life here at all.
I mean, why do people send out, you know, why is spam so effective? Why is phishing so effective? Not that many percentage of people actually respond to it, but they don't have to because it's so automated. There aren't any humans involved that you have to pay and feed their families and give them medical care.
Yeah.
So it can just keep on working it out as far as it'll go.
Yep. I just do keep track, however, when I do get some of the spam in, just think, okay, where is this coming from? You know, what source is it? Is it coming from a compromised U.S. server of some sort? Or is it coming from foreign servers? And I'm entertained by seeing the different locations that this one is coming from today.
Yeah, I get a bunch of emails when I happen to look at any and I don't click anything. I look down at the bottom, and they're coming out of Romania.
I find, but sometimes it's a red herring as well, because if you actually trace the IP address back and seeing what hop it goes through to get to it, it's just like, so I would have made the same assumption that, oh, this came from the middle of Australia, when in fact it really was from Romania, because the Romania connection is the previous hop to the center of Australia. If you believe it.
Yeah, and if they're using a VPN, then you wouldn't know where they were from.
Right. I mean, well, you know where the terminus of the VPN hit the internet, but that's about it.
You might know the entry point, might know the exit point. That's all you'd know.
Yeah.
In any event, I've seen a lot of them come from what look like compromised accounts on Azure server and various other Microsoft types of accounts, and they could be Amazon Web accounts as well.
Yeah, for the ones that I found, and I used the nice email header analyzer from Azure, and let it go ahead and analyze the thing and said, okay, show me all the hops, show me all the IP addresses. Where do you think this came from? Oh, interesting. This thinks it came sourced from an Amazon, a Azure server run by Amazon. Okay, so.
Yep. That's a lot of what comes through.
And so those are the ones I try and use the nice report phishing out of web-based Outlook to highlight and say, okay, report this to them, and hey, this is one of yours. Go fix it.
In Yahoo and in Gmail, the only ones that have gotten into my inbox are ones where they were clever enough to send it to a dead-end address and then put me in as a blind copy. ACC.
Okay. Actually, I'm still fortunate. My Gmail addresses have very, very little spam, like non-existent, but I don't use them except to send myself email from like my phone or something. I want to send something, I captured something, and I want to send that to my email addresses, and occasionally share with a couple other people, but that's about it.
My Gmail doesn't get used in online shopping or anything like that.
Oh, no.
So even still, there are peaks and valleys. There are little waves of spam that come through, and then for a long time there's very little, then some more, and then very little. I also have Fastmail, which I pay for, and they're based somewhere off in Australia. They get the Asian phishing scams,
Yes.
all the spam that comes through that direction. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how their spam differs from ours.
So yeah, can you even read it?
Oh yeah, most of it is in English because it'll come out of Singapore or Hong Kong or other places where they know English.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of email that comes through, like people that still think I work for Motorola or something. They're trying to get me to invest in their business opportunities. That nope, sorry guys, you're out of here. So
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that.
okay, any other suggestions for future meetings? No comments? Just find something that's interesting and go with it. Okay.
Well, you can-
I may look into that. What is considered family by Microsoft?
Yeah, that's,
And how to get around the family restriction with Microsoft.
You can always get into the sticky wicket of AI, and besides Chat GPT and Bing and Bart.
Hmm.
I would be too afraid to go too much farther into AI for fear of actually creating Skynet.
Yeah.
Well, right now there is no real general AI out there. There isn't any.
Right. But
It hasn't been achieved.
But
Well, when they say the jobs that might be jeopardized by some of the AIs that are coming up, and they talk about writers and they talk about
artists.
editing stuff and whatever, and then they also say computer programmers.
Yeah, computer programming.
That's when you get a worry, is when the computers can write their own code and come up with their own ideas of what their priorities are, and we have not yet codified the 3 laws of robotics yet. We're in trouble.
That's what this is all about, preparing the robots.
And preparing for robots, yes.
Yeah,
And the robots will take over, and they'll just, if you ever want an interesting story about the ultimate endpoint with that, there's a short story by Asimov that's called With Folded Hands.
Mhm.
Look it up and read it, then you'll understand. I won't break anything more about that, but With Folded Hands by Isaac Asimov. Good story. Future of what's going to happen to all of us. Okay, well, I think we got everything taken care of, and it has reached our magic time here. So I will go ahead and let Tim go ahead and finish the recording, and thank you very much.